Hello everyone, today we're learning Bobekama, Daf Kuf Zayin. Before we start, I would like to shout out and thank Moshe Cohen Akoyen and Levi Dansky Akoyen and YC Fletcher for putting my shir on their status and being Magdal Torah in Klal Yisrael and spreading the shir. Thank you very much. Okay, we're starting Kuf Vav Amud Beis, 3 lines up. So before we start, I want to be magdim a little bit. So there is a din of moide b'miktas. Moide b'miktas means someone who admits in a bit, meaning Reuven comes to Shimon and he says, Shimon, you owe me 100 pounds. And Shimon says, no, I don't owe you anything. That's koifa koil. He doesn't agree with anything. What does moide b'miktas mean? Shimon says, I owe you 50 pounds or I owe you 20 pounds, but the other 80 pounds is nonsense. That is moide b'miktas. He admits to a bit of the claim that Reuven claims to him. That's by alva. And by pikodon, it means, let's say Reuven comes to Shimon and says, I gave you 2 cows to keep. And Shimon says, you gave me only 1 cow to keep. So he's moide on 1 cow and he's disagreeing on the other cow. That's moide b'miktas by pikodon. Now, the psukim, the whole din of moide b'miktas is learned from the pasuk in Shomrim, not in alva. In Shomrim it says in the pasuk, Ki hu zeh. That means, this is it, why I owe you and nothing more. That means I admit on 1 cow, or I admit on 50 pounds, but I don't admit on the rest where you say that you owe me. After we start over there, let's start the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chia, the son of her Abba, says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Atoyin tanas gane b'pikodon. If Reuven comes to Shimon and says, where is the cow that I gave you to keep? I want it back. And Shimon says that it got stolen. So we said the special chiddush that like a ganav himself pays double if we catch him. So if someone tanas ganav epikodin and makes a shvur that it got stolen, and then we find out that he himself stole it, he also has to pay double. So comes Rabbi Chia Barabba in the name of Yochanan, and he said, if someone's tanas ganav epikodin, einu chayev ache ich b'miktas v'yoyde b'miktas. To pay kefil, you only chayev if you pay, if you admit a little bit and you don't admit to the rest. If you're koifa koil, if Reuven comes to Shimon and says, where's my 2 cows? And Shimon says, I don't know what you're talking about, and makes a shvur, he won't have to pay kefil. My timer, what's the reason? The Omar ki hu zeh. It says in the pasuk of Shomrim, of Pikodon, ki hu zeh, that means moide b'miktas, like we explained. So therefore, by moide b'miktas, by Shomrim, you'd only be chayev if you're moide b'miktas. Says the Gemara, pliga the Rabbi Chia bar Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yochanan argues on Rabbi Chia, the son of Rabbi Yosef. The Omar Rabbi Chia bar Rabbi Yosef, he says, Erev Parshios Kosov Kan. When it says ki hu zeh about Shomrim, really it's a type of a mix up in the Torah. Really, this pasuk of ki hu zeh is really only talking about alone. It's not talking about a pikodin, a deposit, someone who gave someone to keep. And when it says in the Torah ki hu zeh that you need to be moide b'miktas and otherwise you're not chayev, it's talking about someone who lends someone money and then you only chayev a shvur if you're moide b'miktas. And said the Gemara, Maishno Milv. So therefore he argues on Rabbi Yochanan because he's saying that the ki hu zeh is only talking about alva, not about pikodon. And Rabbi Yochanan says no, ki hu zeh is talking about also about pikodon. As the Gemara, Maishno Milva. Rashi explains, why are we taking the pasuk of ki hu zeh and we're pushing it away from pikodon and pushing it, saying that it's only talking about alva and not pikodon. So the Gemara Kudirabba, there's a svar behind it. What's the reason the Torah tells us? Someone who admits a little bit of the claim against him has to make a shvur, because chazaka ein odomeiz pono b'fnei bal choiva. Really, when Reuven comes to Shimon and says, you owe me 100 pounds, Shimon wants to say, I don't owe anything. But he doesn't have the guts. Reuven made him a toiva. He made him a favor. He gave him 100 pounds as a loan. So he doesn't have the guts to say this never happened. So he admits. really he wants to say, I don't owe you anything. The reason why he doesn't say that, he doesn't have the guts in front of someone who did him a favor. Really, he wants to be moide. He really doesn't want to be a bad person. He wants to pay back the whole £100 because he knows he owes £100. The reason why he admitted only on 50, Sova, he thinks, if I'll admit to the whole £100 that he took as a loan, I'll have to pay it all and I don't have the money to pay. I'll get away, I'll say, oh, I only owe 50 and I'll get away from the other 50. And when I'll have the money later on, the other 50, I'll pay the other 50. Hilkoch, that's the reason why Romer Rachmana Shvur Lovei, why the Torah, Hashem, puts a shvur on him. He won't want to make a shvur l'sheker, and he'll say, I'm not going to make such a big avera and make a shvur l'sheker. I'll be moida, I'll just have to pay. Ilkach, that's why Romer Rachmana Shvur Lovei, he'll admit on the whole £100 that he owes. But this is that especially by a loan where we say this svara, because by a loan he doesn't have the guts to be koifa akol because the guy did him a favor. Aval gabe pikodin, where Shimon got something to keep to God until he gives it back. He has the guts to say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about if he got lost or something, because he never got toiva from Reuven. So therefore, even if he's koifa akol, he'll be chayev a shvur, not like alvo. And Rabbi Yochanan argues and says only by moedim miktas is chayev. Tony Rabin Bar Chama, the son of Chama, learned Abar Shoimrim, 4 of the Shoimrim. That means that Shemechinam, Shemesocha, Neshesocha, and Ashoyel, someone who gets something to keep for free, someone who gets paid for keeping, someone who is a renter, and someone who's a borrower. Zichin kfir b'miktas, voidah b'miktas, kedei that they should be chayev a shvur about what happened when Reuven comes to Shimon and says, I want my 2 cows I gave you to God, or I paid you to God them, or I lent you them, or I rented you to them. They only chayev to Reuven a shvur if they admitted about one of them, and they're koi for the other one if they moide b'miktas. The Eluin, and these are the ones, like we said, Shemechinam doesn't get paid for his job, Shoyel, a borrower, Nesesocha, who gets paid for guarding the cows, Vasoichan, someone who rents the cows. Omar, so he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, not like what we just said before, that it's Erev Parshiyas Nehemakan. Omar Rova, my time, and what's the reason? The Romi Bar Chama, Shoymechinam, Behed Yeksiv Be, it says clearly in the Psukim of Shoymechinam, Ki Huzeh, and that's a pasuk of Shemechinam, and it says over there the pasuk of Moide b'Miktas. Shemesachar. The reason is because Yalif Nesina Nesina. It says by Shemechinam Nesina, and it says Nesina by Shemesachar. So we know it has the same din that only with Moide b'Miktas could be chayev a shvur. Mishemechinam we learn it. Shoyel, how do we know it? Because it says V'chi Ishal. It says a Vav Moisif Alinin Rishon. Whenever it says Vav connects you. So why is it trying to connect the Shoyel to the other parashas of Shemechinam and Shemesocha? It's coming to tell you that has the same din that shows only chayev shvur if he's moide b'miktas. Soicha, so soicha is a machloikis. What's the din of a soicha? How did he pay? Some shit is hold like that he's like a Shemesocha, and some people hold it like a Shemechinam. So says the Gemara, Ileman domer kishemesocha, eine Shemesocha that will in nesina. Ileman domer kishemechinam, eine Shemechinam, and Shemechinam itself it says ki huzeh the din of moide b'miktas. Says the Gemara weiter, V'omar Rabbi Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yosef says, Atoyin tanas gana bepikodin. Reuven gave Shimon 2 cows, and Shimon said they got stolen. Ein chayev, he only has to pay kefel if he makes a shvur, ad sheishloch bayad. If before the whole thing happened, he was shaleach yad. Shleich yad means he used the item. Shimon's not allowed to use these cows. His man just guard them. If he used it for his own use, that's called shlichus yad, and it's like a type of stealing. Then he says it got stolen, and he makes a shvur, and we find that he stole it. Only then he's chayav to pay kefel. My timer, what's the reason? The Omar Kro, because it says in the Pasuk, V'nikra Bala Bayis El Elokim. And the God who is guarding the Chayfetz, goes to Besdin and makes a shvur, Im lo yisholach yodei b'meleches re'eu, if he never used the item that he was menu God. Michlal, we could see the isholach boyad, that if he did use it before, Michayev, he will be chayev kefel if he afterwards made a shvur. Lememro, to tell you the b'sholach boyad askinan, that he only chayev this kefel if he actually used it early on. Amar lehu Rab Chia bar Abba, Achi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan argues on what we just said, and he says, Boimedes alavusa shanu, that Rabbi Yochanan says even if he never ever used it, and it's just standing on his pile of food, still you'll be chayev kefel if you made a shvur sheker that got stolen and really he stole it. So he argues one shit to hold, so you only chayev kefel if you used it. Rabbi Yochanan says if you didn't use it, you chayev kefel. Omar Rab Zera Rab Chia bar Abba. Rab Zera asked the shaila to Rab Chia bar Abba, the fear of Rabbi Yochanan, is it dafka boy medes alavusa kama? Is it specially only in a case where he wasn't sholech bayad? That's when he chayev kefel. And he argues completely on the other shitta who says that it's dafka b'sholech bayad, and he says dafka not sholech bayad. Avol sholech bayad, if he did use it kono, when he was sholech yad, when he used it without permission, he's a gazlan, and it becomes his to be chayev be'ointzim. The shvur, now that he makes a shvur that got stolen, loy mahanye be. Klum, it doesn't help, it doesn't do anything because he's a gazlan already, he's not shoyme anymore. And therefore he won't be chayev kefel if he was sholech yad. Or did Rabbi Yochanan mean to say, afilu oimedes alavusa ka'oma, even though that he never sholech bayad. But for sure, so if he was sholech bayad, like we said before, that the pashas apostle means that he was sholech bayad and he'll be chayev. So did Rabbi Yochanan mean dafka or lav dafka? Omalei told him, Zuloi Shamati, I never heard from Rabbi Yochanan clear about this. Kayotze bo Shamasi, but I heard something similar, so let's learn from that similar case to here. The Omar Ravasi, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Ravasi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Atoyen Tanas Ovad. Reuven comes to Shimon, and he says, where is my cows? And Shimon says it got lost, and Shimon is a shemechinam, and a shemechinam's potter by Aveda. And we said, what's the din if he says his ovad and he makes a shvur and we find out that he stole it, you don't have to pay kefil. So he said that Tanas od v'nishba, and he made a shvur, a lie, v'choza v'Tanas ganev, and then says, you know what, really didn't get lost, it got stolen from me. V'nishba, and he made again a shvur, ubo Eidim, and now Eidim came and say, no, it's still in Shimon's house, he's hiding it. Potter, he doesn't have to pay kefil, even though that he made a shvur that he got stolen, and he timed that he got stolen. So he's trying to bring a raya. My time, and what's the reason that your potter lav mishum dekono b'shvur rishona? Is it not because when he made the first shvur that was lost, that's it? He's patterning himself already from the thing, and he's becoming a ganev in this case. So now when he makes a second shvur, he's just making a random second shvur. There's no chiyuv on him on second shvur. So the same over here by us, if he was sholeach yad, so that's it, he becomes a gazlan, and that's it. Now that he makes a shvur, he's not chayev for that shvur kefel. So l'chor, we have a raya from a similar case. Omalei. So Rab Zera told Rab Chia bar Abba, no, that's not pshat over there. You know why over there you're potter? You don't have to pay kefel. Oil v'yotze yedei bailim b'shvur rishono. Because when he came to the first Bezdin and he said it was lost, and he made a shvur, that's it. He's potter from the Bailim. The Bailim has no tviyim against him anymore. Now when he comes to the second Bezdin and now he says Nignav and makes a shvur, it's a shvur. It's not because he was koiner it for the first shvur and he became a gazlin and now you know chayev. No, the reason is because he's potter. It's not called a shvur of gneva, of tainis gneva, because he's not chayev this shvur. So l'chorah, we don't have a raya from that to the other case of Rabbi Yochanan, and we don't know, did Rabbi Yochanan said dafka imedes alavusa or also afilu imedes alavusa? Itmanami, we have a raya. We learned as well that clearly that the reason over there in such a case is because Yotza Bailim de Shvur Rishona, because Omar Abin, Omar Rabbi Lo, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Atoin Tanas Haveda Bipikodin, Shimon said it was lost. And Ben Nishba, and he made the Shvur, V'chozav Atoin Tanas Gneva, and then he said it was stolen. Ben Nishba, and he made another Shvur, and Bo Edim, that it's by him, Potter. And here it says clearly, you know why? Oil V'yotze de Bailim B'Shvur Rishona, because he's already Potter, and the second Shvur is not considered a proper Shvur. So it's not. So it says clearly that that's the reason why you potter in such a case. Omar of Sheishes, Atoin Tanas Ganim B'Pikodin. If Reuven comes to Shimon and says to him, "Where's my cows?" and Shimon says, "It got stolen," and he makes a shvur, Kevan shesholach boyad, if he used it already before, potter. He is potter, the opposite from what we said before in the name of Reb Chia bar Yosef, that says that you only chayiv if you sholach bayad. It says no, the opposite. It means if you're sholach bayad, you're potter. My timer, what's the reason? He learns it from the same pasuk. And he goes to make a shvur im lo sholach yodoi that he didn't use it. Sholach yodoi, it's mash. He learns like this: if he was sholach yad potter, and you don't have to pay kefel, the opposite of Reb Chia bar Yosef. Omale Rab Nachman says, ask them l'chorah shayla. V'aloi sholosh shvuos mashbim oisoi, a shoyma chinom who says that it's stolen, we make him make 3 shvuos. Shvuos shaloi pashati, first shvuos that I didn't neglect the animal and leave the gate open. So, because if it was pasha, it'll be chayev. Shvuos shaloi shalachti boyad. Another shvuos is the second shvuos that he never used it. Because if he used it, he's chayev even if it was a gneva. And the third shvuah is shvuah she'eino b'rshusi, that's I didn't steal it myself. Because if he stole it, obviously he has to give it back. My love, is it not so that shvuah shelo shlachti boyad, the shvuah that I never used it is doing the shvuah she'eino b'rshusi, is similar to the shvuah that's not in my possession. Ma shvuah she'eino b'rshusi, like the shvuah that's not in my possession. Kimi galya milsa di'isi b'rshusi. If we find out afterward that it's actually in his possession and he stole it, chayev, he needs to pay kefel. So similar is af shvuah shelo shalachti bayad. In the case where he makes a shvuah that I never used it, kimigalia milsa. If we find out afterwards the shalach bayad that he actually used it, chayev, he will be chayev. So l'chorah you could see that it's similar shvuahs, and if you were shalach bayad, you'll be chayev. Not like what we just said that if you shalach bayad, you'll be potter. Omalei loy, no. Shvuah shaloi shalachti bayad, the shvuah that he made that I never used it, is dumya the shaloi pashati bo, is like the shvuah that I wasn't posha. Ma shvuah shaloi pashati, like the shvuah that I never neglected it, bo kimigalia milsa the posha. If we found out that he was a posha and because of that it got stolen, the posha, bo potter, you'll be potter because it got stolen. He has to pay for the pshia, but he doesn't have to pay kefil. So potter mikefil obviously has to pay the capital because he didn't guard this animal very good. Af shvur shelo shalachti bayad, also the shvur that he wasn't sholech bayad, kimigalia milsa the sholach bayad. When we find out that, if we find out that he actually used the animal before it got stolen or before he stole it, potter mikefel, he doesn't have to pay kefel, like we said before, and therefore there's no raya from this brisa, not this way, because he could always say shvur shelo shalachti bayad. You could say it's like pshia, you could say it's like she'eino b'rshusi, so there's no raya from this brisa. Everyone should have a very blessed week. Thank you very much.